Hi, I'm Taylor McMullen, and this is the Hollyhood podcast where we talk about everything Black movies and Black TV. And this is my co host, Gabrielle Green.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Green. I'm excited to be here and to get started.
Okay. So let's talk about what makes a Black movie a Black movie. So, in your opinion, what are the qualifying factors?
So I guess it's one of those things where it's like so many definitions where there's not a solid definition, but you know it when you see it. Because I wouldn't say it's necessarily has to be a Black director. I think it helps. I don't think, I think it's something that has to be accepted by us, like something that has to be, it doesn't even have to be embraced, I would say, just something that I think is, I don't know. It's a good question now that I think about it, because there are certain movies like I think of like The Color Purple, the original, that was directed by Steven Spielberg. And it's like, what does Steven Spielberg know? No offense to him. But at the same time, I would classify that as a Black movie because it did so much. So I think it's one of those things where something that portrays part of a lived experience, not the whole thing, doesn't have to be everything, but just something that people can identify with, whether they agree with it, disagree with it, like it, don't like it, think it's funny, think it's whatever, something that does speak to people's experience. And I think that's why it's interesting to see the movies that kind of fail in that regard, the things that fall short, because sometimes I feel like they have all the ingredients. Like I forget, there was a movie recently, I think it had Jeffrey Wright in it, and I think it was something like, I forget what it was called, like the Society of Magical Negroes or something like that.
Yes.
And there was a lot of criticism of it, and I didn't see it, so I can't speak to it, but I think that there is something to be said about, you can have all the pieces, but I think if there's not authenticity there and like a genuine motive, I think sometimes people can see through that. So I think it's a good question. It's something I have to think about more, to be honest, because I think it's more than the sum of its parts, is what I would say. But what do you think? What would you classify?
I think as far as cast goes, I think I have to have a Black lead.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
sure. Black lead character, and or a Black writer, Black director. And I don't know, I don't feel the same way about producing. Like I don't necessarily feel like they need to have a Black producer for it to be a Black film. But I think that those qualifying things for me kind of makes something worth examining in this light. Because it's, like, for example, I think Wicked is definitely a Black movie.
Yes.
She's the lead. And I think that when box office is counted at the end of these Black films where we have Black leads or Black writers or Black directors, it's not always quantified how the impact of that representation affects the box office from the Black audience. And I think that, when you see films like Black Panther and you see how the box office turned out for things like that, the power of the Black dollar when it comes to going to the box office is extremely potent. And I think that that's why examining stuff like this is really, really important. And, bringing representation of it's not just, we're waiting every couple months or a year to get that really big Black movie. We have had a lot of really great Black films throughout time. And I think that exploring that and, spreading the awareness to what's already there and what's coming out as we're moving through, I think that to me is where I think is worth examining. Like where, like you said, like where we resonate and like, is it being talked about? Are people in our community talking about this, even though, mass media might not see Wicked as a Black film.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely a Black movie.
That makes sense, actually, because now that I think about it, I think something like Wicked, I think having a Black lead in something like Wicked is not just a matter of casting. Like, I don't think that if they the script would be the same regardless, and they were just going to cast whoever. I think that there are certain things, and I know people complain, and that's a whole other conversation about, oh, who are we going to cast as what? But to be honest, Wicked, I think, is a good example of having a black lead just isn't about black casting. Mm-hmm. Like, it is clear that maybe the part wasn't written for Cynthia Erivo personally. I mean, I feel like it probably was. But you can tell the script wouldn't have been the same. The production wouldn't have been the same with a different lead. So, yeah, I think that makes sense. It's interesting to think about, to be honest, because so much of what also makes a black film is just how it's received, how things, as you said, resonate. Mm-hmm. And it's a gamble because you're not going to know until, but I think that people's intentions in films are usually very clearer than I think that they kind of understand or maybe set out. You can kind of see people's intentions in a film, and I think people pick up on that.
Yeah. I think the way that the story impacts you based on how Cynthia Erivo played her character and the choices that she made as the lead for her character. I want long nails. I want micro braids. I don't want the special effects or the visual effects makeup on my makeup. I want, to really, really feel the way that I feel in my skin with this green. And I think the nuance of having a black woman play Elphaba really resonated with a lot of black women. And I think that it shed a lot of light on how society interacts with black women in majority white spaces and how white women navigate through the world in that type of opposition.
And I think it makes Glinda and Elphaba's relationship way more potent too, because I think it adds the other layer of it. Because people were talking a lot about how Glinda kind of represented white feminism, stuff like that. And I think it kind of just was underlined by the fact that it was Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande in those roles. So, yeah, I honestly didn't think about it in that way. But I think that makes sense. And also it's interesting to see what people adopt to. Because I think Wicked is a black film. But it's funny to see other things that you would never, like people's love of Paramore, things like that are just adopted. And it feels like it just makes sense. Like, I don't know. I think it's something to explore. It's very interesting.
Yeah. When it comes to shows, I feel like the cast situation is different. Like, you could say lead for a film, but then when it comes to a show, like let's say New Girl, New Girl is not a black show.
No.
You have to have like more than half or at least half of your cast, your main leads being black in order for it to be a black show, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
I think New Girl especially would not be a black show just because of the characters of Coach versus what's the other character's name? The guy who replaced Coach? Wait, what was his name? I'm old.
With a W. I'm old too.
I can't. But I think
I know what you're talking about.
But I think that just goes to show, because I think it definitely is not a black show in the fact that Coach left the first season and then they replaced him with another black male character, which is fine. But it's like, okay, we have Winston. I was going to say Wilson.
Me too. I was going to say.
I know, and I was like, I know it's wrong though, but Winston, they immediately replaced him, and it was, I mean, they said he was like a basketball player, like in Lithuania. I don't know. But to me, I was like, okay, so they've essentially lost their representation. Now they have to quickly replace him with someone who is nothing like Coach, which I mean, I guess is better than someone exactly like him. But that to me is just, it's one of the more transparent. And also I think that having, like you said, I think a black show, a black movie has a black lead. Point blank period. There's no way around that. I think that a TV show, because people had interesting conversations about Euphoria as well. And I know that is complicated as well too. But I wouldn't necessarily qualify Euphoria as a Black show.
Mm-hmm.
I think one, just because it was written by Sam Levinson, so there's layers to that.
Right.
But and I remember too, also people really enjoying Euphoria, but also taking it giving them pause because so many people online were saying Rue needs Black friends. Like Rue needs Black friends. What is happening to her? So I think a film having a Black lead is instrumental to being a Black film. I think the same with TV as well, but I think TV is definitely messier in terms of representation in general. And I think that we see it time and time again. I think the history of TV is just messier in terms of representation. We have like the history of especially dark-skinned Black women being replaced by light-skinned Black women in TV. Mm-hmm. And this happens time and time again. So, I mean, I think that TV I think there's so many more qualifiers that need to be in place, especially because it's a team of writers creating these characters and stuff. So I agree. I think that New Girl especially egregious,
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then for Euphoria, with Sam Levinson being the creator of the show, how do you feel about white writers using Black characters in ways that are provocative to our community in that way where we're like, well, I don't know if this is necessarily how it would go if she had a Black community, or, you know, like wanting more representation and not just the representation that's there.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it definitely is. I think categorically, I would say it's tricky. It would give me pause. I would be suspicious. Mm-hmm. I think it can be done well, depending on who the person is. I think it was interesting, a little weird, but interesting that he said that he really pictured himself as Rue, or that she was just like representation for his high school. Exactly.
This is news to me.
Exactly. This is what I heard.
This is news to me.
This is what I heard. So I think it is, personally, I find it weird to say the least, especially just because I think there is something to be said about TV does cast. I've noticed a lot of biracial people, which is fine, but I do feel like in terms of representation, and I know this is the calls coming from inside the house, but I do think it is one of those things that is a little concerning, just because people have pointed it out time and time again as well, where it's just, for some reason, like your Black lead or your Black character is like a biracial girl, which is fine at times, but it just feels a little weird. Mm-hmm. And if I feel like it's weird, I'm sure other people feel like it's weird. So I think there's a layer of that as well, where it's like, okay, what are you doing? And then also, why you picture yourself as this girl is, I mean, I guess maybe to him it could be edgy, it could be different. Maybe he felt like people don't want to see a fraught young white male teen just like doing drugs and being like delinquent or something. Mm-hmm. But also I think that there are certain things that that are viewed differently. And I think that a lot of it is about authenticity. Like I remember, I don't think Barry Jenkins caught any flack, but I remember there were conversations about the portrayal of the mother in Moonlight. Mm. And he said that this was based on some real things, and, you know, it was grounded in something real. And so even though there was a portrayal of a Black woman going through those things and dealing with addiction and stuff like that, it did come from an authentic place. It didn't feel weird, especially because it was a Black director. The lead was Black. All of the characters, to my knowledge, or most, were Black. So there was that. But the fact that Rue is the lead, and she is sort of the fuck up, which, I mean, is fine. Like, give Black women complicated characters, of course. Mm-hmm. But it just creates so many layers of doubt for me. I'm like, did you go through the right thought processes in sort of crafting this character? Or did you just use her as a shell for what you feel and what you do, and you put her as like this little costume? Like, that to me is weird. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's weird if you feel like you're embodying your experience through, like you said, a shell.
Yeah.
Do we know if Sam Levinson is queer or straight?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay. That'd be interesting to...
That would be interesting. That would be,
Yeah.
things to investigate.
Very much so. So I don't know. It kind of, it feels a little contrived.
Yeah.
You know? But shout out to Zendaya. She definitely, played the hell out of that role.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to dig back into what you said earlier about television casting biracial main characters. And, like, I want to know, some other shows outside of Euphoria that give those types of examples that kind of strike you in that way. And then what do you think goes through casting's head, like, when they're doing that? Like, when you asked, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you... why is majority of television casting that way and not, casting for more dark-skinned lead actors and actresses? Because I'm also casting for my thesis, and, like, I wonder what goes through majority of casting set, because I don't think a lot of people know. Only 1% of casting directors in Hollywood are Black, and pretty much all of their films. There's Kim Coleman.
Yep.
There's Vicky Thomas, and I cannot remember the third one.
Okay. I'm gonna write this down. I need to research this. But yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think that I know that there was, the reason I even bring it up is because there's recent conversation of the Wizards of Waverly Place reboot, where they have, I don't know who's daughter, like, there's a new girl, like the next generation, which I think is cute.
Yep.
And the main character is, and she's biracial, and people, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but people started to be like, well, why is it there's always a biracial child? Like, what is going on? And I think that it is one of those things that I think on a larger scale, I feel like representation is regressing. It is, to me, it feels weird. And it's one, like I said before, like, if I notice it, it's something. Because I'm like, this is interesting. But I think that a lot of it, I honestly think part of it could be the agents, actresses' agents. Okay. Not that to, absolve TV shows of the blame, but I could see, like, an agent or a manager unfortunately, volunteering their monoracial clients for one role, or maybe their biracial clients for other roles. And I don't know. It's just a thought, but I think that's just one piece of the puzzle. I also think that I definitely think that that representation is regressing. And I know that it's not like there's some situations where a biracial actress is instrumental, like a show like Ginny in Georgia. It makes sense because her mom is Georgia. But in other situations, it does feel like we have fulfilled our requirement to have a Black character, but this character is still palatable, quote unquote, to white audiences. And it feels like so much of it is just relaxing after a couple years ago. I think there was a huge push, and I think it's one of those things where unless we're pushing, people won't do anything. And I feel like there were strides being made, and it's interesting because I really feel like it's worse on the TV stage than in the film world. I think it's still pretty bad, because if we think of, like, actresses under 30, you have, like, Zendaya, you have Keke Palmer, you have Io Debris, Taylor Russell. 2 of them are biracial. Like, there's not a lot of, like, young Black actresses on the main stage, and I'm sure there are, but, like, not to the level that young white actresses are. And I think that things are regressing. I think there's just a general cultural regression like across the board, And I think now that I feel like maybe people might feel like since we've taken our foot off the gas just a little bit, no one's watching, we can just go back to our old ways. Because people talk about it. People talk about growing up, there were more Black shows for children. There were more things for there were more Black shows for children, more Black movies for children. Now it just feels weird. I think part of it could be just the fact that there are shows that will do like measly representation, so there may feel like there's less of a need, quote unquote, for Black shows because maybe networks are saying, oh, well, we have Black characters in this and this and this. Not the case. And if the Black characters are biracial, it's fine, but it's not great. And also, who are you serving? Mm-hmm. You're serving your white constituents who are like, well, you should probably have someone. You're not serving the actual children or the actual people who are going to be watching this. So it's weird. And other people have noted that it's weird. So I don't understand what the point of it is.
Yeah. I'm going to theorize that the point of it is because they know the value of Black audiences and Black viewers and Black Twitter, Black social media. Mm-hmm. So they want to do this inclusion so that they can get that monetarily, but they're not actually invested in hiring the Black writers in the room, making sure the representation doesn't feel contrived, and they're not making sure that they're speaking to the community that character represents. Yeah. And it's just like, well, this is, anybody, like, I feel like some writers, when they're doing that and they're trying to like be inclusive in that way, like they'll write a character that's obviously white and then just be like, now they're Black. Yeah. And that's what I feel like, I want to say is not what they did with New Girl, because Coach was this athletic Black character. Yes. And then Winston came in, supposed to be like super athletic, came from Lithuania, pro ball overseas character. So that was like, okay, the writers were like, we want a spot for a Black person. But I would say Winston's character, and possibly even Coach, if I go back to the first season, were not culturally relatable in the way that they were written. Yeah. It's just like, okay, I see myself on screen, but I don't hear myself.
Yeah. And it's weird because I know that progress isn't linear. Society ebbs and flows. But when we were compiling our list of shows and things, we went through so many different eras. And recently I've been watching older shows and things like that. And obviously this is not, comprehensive, but it really felt like there were times when representation was just better. When there were shows that actually felt like Black shows and nothing was forced, nothing was strange. Like, even if there were, and you could see in the credits, white producing partners, white writers, a mixture of, people, it felt genuine. And I think now, and I think part of it too is that we see it at our level too, at least for me, like, you'll see other people's writing and it's, it's good. But at times I'm like, I think that you just created these characters race blind, which usually means white. And then we're like, I need to ... apply these different identities, and then it'll be good. And then, but at the same time, it's not, people can see through that. Right. But I think there's this gotcha that people have where they're like, oh, well, are you saying a Black character has to act in this way? Are you saying that a character, it's like, no, that's actually not what anyone's saying. Yeah. I feel like people use that against others and it just comes off disingenuous.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in those cases, it feels like this character is written for you so that you feel like, oh, I'm representing maybe however many Black people I have in my community, and it's written for the way that you perceive people, and it's not written for me and for my community. It's, this version of a Black character and a Black person that makes you comfortable, and you're not doing the work to talk to people who are part of that community, writers who are part of that community, other creatives who are part of that community, and making sure and ensuring that your characters have depth to them, especially if you come from a community where you're not very diverse in how you socialize. And it's just like, oh, well, I see Black people. I kind of can understand what I think Black people act like, or how they talk, or, you know, how they interact with society. But you don't, and you can never really know. And I think that the work to get that authenticity is not being done by the white filmmakers.
No.
At any degree.
No, it's not. And I think it's made worse and enabled by, because I think it also can happen with Black writers and Black directors, because I think in general we do just have an access problem across the board, regardless of race. People, like, this is an expensive and difficult situation to even get to this point. It's hard. You have to work insanely hard. I always forget how many people's parents pay their rent. You know, it's one of those situations where so many people who actually would be able to bring something interesting, authentic, good, are just boxed out already because, and I think that's part of it too, is that, you know, the institutions we go through to get to where we need to be are majority white institutions. Therefore, a part of the skill is navigating these majority white institutions, meshing well with majority white institutions, rubbing elbows, getting along, having a good reputation. And some of that is not in our control. And I think that a huge part of those barriers is that I think just by design, the people who can tell our stories are the people who get along the best with white people. And it's not a crime. There's nothing, you know, but at the same time, well, it's not a
Girl.
but it's a situation. It's a situation. But I think then so we have white writers and non-Black writers who are telling inauthentic stories, but then we also have Black writers who are telling inauthentic stories. And we've seen criticisms of Black writers who it feels like maybe you grew up in a a PWI or something like that, and that's fine. But be honest with your understanding of your life and other people's lives. Know your limitations. And I think that it's made worse too, because the actual Black writers who then do promote certain things are just legitimized by their white peers, especially because their white peers are like, see, this Black writer is co-signing everything I'm saying. And it's just a multifaceted problem. And I think the solution requires making so many powerful people uncomfortable, which may be successful for a small group of people, but it's hard.
So what have you been watching lately?
Oh my gosh, this is weird. Well, not weird, but I've been watching a lot of like old American sitcoms. So I've been watching The Jeffersons beginning to end. I've been watching The Jeffersons. I've been watching 227 because I started watching All in the Family because I was with my granny over for Christmas, and they were watching All in the Family, and they were laughing at an episode where the main character accidentally joins the KKK. And I was like, Granny, what are you doing? Like, why are we watching this? Is this Christmas? But she was like, whatever. So I was like, okay, well, then let me find out who made this. So then I watched The Jeffersons. And then I watched 227, which led me back to Sister Sister. So I've just been watching old American sitcoms. I think part of it is just because it was Christmas time.
Right.
I've just been trying to get out of the like HBO industrial complex where every single time I have to watch like a new stressful show. So I've just been watching American sitcoms, and I followed the chronology too. So I watched The Jeffersons, and then Marla Gibbs was on The Jeffersons, and then she was on 227. She had her own show. Then Jack A. Harris was on 227, and then Jack A. Harris was on Sister Sister. So it's been fun kind of just watching like over the decades how actors will start here, then here, then here. But it was just like a very like, I needed something heartwarming. I didn't want to deal with any stressful shows at the moment. But that's what I've been watching. Oh, and I've also been watching Industry, which has been an experience. I watched it for Harper, and it's been a time. So I like all of these so far.
Did you finish the season, or like how far are you into Industry right now?
I finished the first season.
Okay.
I loved the ending of the first season.
Okay.
It was like, I go back and forth on Harper's character and how they did her. I'm glad that they gave her such a complex character. I'm glad that all the characters are like so hateable at times. I definitely have thoughts, but at the same time, I do like how complex they made her.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to offset the stress of that, I definitely had to watch a lot of sitcoms. How about you?
I've been watching Get Millie Black.
I watched part of the pilot.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing representation. First of all, queer representation of Jamaica, which is not really ever seen outside of documentaries because it is illegal in Jamaica still to just exist. So there's a group of people in Jamaica who do not have their human rights protected. And it sheds a lot of light on the trans community in Jamaica and the Gully and what that life is like and what it's like to be in familial relation and have, you know, a connection to somebody who's living in a place that's so oppressive that they feel the most comfortable living in gullies and alleyways because their community is there for them. That's where the queer community in Jamaica is. And I think that the representation is really, really nice. And shedding the light on the human trafficking in the Caribbean, as well as, you know, the white elites who have generationally been in Jamaica since the colonial days, and like how they take advantage of the economic system there, the people there, the poor people there, the people who are trying to make it out by any means. I think it's a really important show for the Caribbean diaspora. And I've also been watching The Madness on Netflix. That's a Coleman Domingo show. I think it just came out. But it's pretty much like he's a newscaster who ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time, sees some shit. And essentially he's in the crossfire between neo-Nazis who are undercover and in high places, like very high places. It makes me think about the Luigi stuff like a lot. And the neo-Nazis are in crossfire with Antifa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm almost done with the season, but I think it's interesting how they had one of the recurring characters, one of the key characters, be a neo-Nazi and then kind of make it seem like he's not the bad guy, but the Antifa's the bad guy. Like they kind of have Antifa being the antagonist of the series morally and thematically. And I think that the timing of that show being released while the Luigi case is still up in the air is really interesting. Because the Antifa were pretty much killing the neo-Nazis. And because Coleman Domingo's character is not involved in either party, he's literally just a newscaster who was on vacation and saw some shit. I think it's interesting having a black man be the mouthpiece of that, such a large thing that has nothing to do with the black community in that way. Yeah. It shows how we're kind of in the middle, in between, even though we don't have anything to do with it. Yeah. But I don't know if I appreciate the way his character is moving about as far as like whose side he's on. Like he's like, I'm a newscaster, you know, I'm more on the side of get me out of this, even if that means, you know, clearing neo-Nazi shit. And I think it's very timely. It's an extremely timely piece Coleman Domingo is playing the fuck out of that role. You
Oh,
should definitely
absolutely.
check it out. But yeah, I think it's a very big topic piece for right now as far as like what's going on in America.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been watching, and yeah. Can we take a break?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because I'm starting to get hungry.